Welcome to the Planning Committee, dated Wednesday the 26th of March 2025. As we move on to the agenda, do we have any apologies for absence?
We received apologies from Councillor Williamson. Councillor Murphy is here as a sub.
Thank you, and welcome to Councillor Murphy. Do we have any urgent business?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? None noted. Do we have any public questions?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Minutes from the previous meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 26th of February 2025, where I wasn't in attendance, and like to thank my right-hand man, is it? Left-hand man, for standing in my absence. So could we get an approval and a... Agreed? Okay, that's fine, thank you. Okay, so we move on to the first item, which is land south of Ashton Road, wood houses. This was deferred at the last meeting and is now back before the Planning Commission. If I could just pass you over to Peter. Thank you. Sorry, Graham, you? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. As members recall, obviously, this was the January meeting the application was previously considered for. At the end of that meeting, members voted that they wished to defer a decision on the application in order that the applicant could reconsider the access to the site, in particular looking at the adjacent land to the site. You'll see on the first page of the report the response that's formally been received from the applicant setting out their view on that particular issue. What it concludes is the simple fact that that is not a material planning consideration, and that members have to, planners in general, have to deal with the application on its own merits. There are certain circumstances where applications can be considered with alternatives. This is not one of them. So there are no legal requirements for that to be done. There are no policies, either nationally or locally, which set out why that must be done. So that would not be an acceptable reason for refusing an application. What members have to do is to look at the proposal which is before them and to make a determination on that sole basis of whether that is acceptable, again, having regard to material planning considerations. Right, so this is an application for residential development for 41 dwellings with a new access to be formed off Ashton Road at wood houses. Members will be aware that this is a site, it's an allocated site, it was allocated in the current local plan, and that was actually carried through from the previous unitary development plan. It is not a specific allocation in places for everyone, which I think was referred to at the previous meeting. So this is a long-standing site regarded as being suitable for residential development, obviously subject to the details of that development. Get the right way. So this is just showing the location plan and aerial view of the site. So the site's located effectively at the eastern end of wood houses, next to the motorway bridge, which comes across the embankments to the right of the site. So it extends through an area of woodland, or small area of woodland on the Ashton Road frontages, and then continues out into a currently undeveloped area of grassland beyond. Going the wrong way. This is a couple of images from Google, so that's simply showing you in a little bit more detail the actual access to the site. So the wooded area you'll see in the middle of the picture at the bottom left, and then a image again taken from Google of the frontage to the site. So obviously the frontage to the site on the left hand side there with the woodland, and it also then shows the existing houses which are located directly opposite the proposed access position. Here's the picture, again, just a little bit more detail. So this is the area within the wooded part of the site. Obviously, in order to create the access, there will be a loss of tree cover within that area, although a number of trees will be retained as part of that development. The application's been assessed by the council's arboriculturalist. He's satisfied with the trees that are lost and the quality of those trees, and that, in accordance with the council's policies, there will be a replacement planting scheme which will cover, so it's basically, as you know, it's a 2-for-1 replacement that will take place within the development site. So a couple of images now. They're simply showing you the main bulk of the application site. So this is taken from a public footpath that runs off from south from Ashton Road, past the site, and this is obviously on the eastern side of that footpath. The motorway in the distance on the right-hand image beyond the tree cover. Again, other images, these are looking more back towards the Ashton Road frontage, showing some of the existing buildings in the background that the site adjoins. This is a couple of images, again, it's about ecology. So to the west of the site there is a pond, there's an area which has been identified potentially as a breeding ground for great crested newt, for instance. Again, there is a licence been attained by the applicant that there should be no damage to that area, so any work in the vicinity, there is a licence needs to be obtained from Natural England. The left-hand image is showing you the back of the church itself as it adjoins the site, and obviously that will, if the development's approved, back onto residential properties. So this is the layout of the site. Obviously top end you can see the access road as it comes into the site, then becomes a cul-de-sac with a couple of small elements coming off that. The houses obviously are laid out on that basis. A mix of properties. Each one of those properties has 2 off-street car parking spaces associated with them. As you get to the bottom end of the site, there is a link through, that's to a small pump station, another adjoining facility for the treatment of surface water from the site. That part of the site is in the green belt, and I think the next image is basically showing you, so that area in detail, not the building that's on the right, it's the area in front of the building. So essentially in terms of what you will see above ground, it's essentially a fencing, low areas of covers for the underground storage facilities and the pumping equipment on there. So although that's within the green belt, it clearly has no significant impact on the openness of the green belt. This is a conservation area boundary, so the site itself adjoins the southern side of this area. The wooded area is within the conservation area. As part of the application, there was a heritage statement submitted by the applicant and an heritage statement submitted by an objector to the development. As a result, we sought independent advice from heritage consultants. Their conclusions were set out in the report. They didn't consider that this would have a significant impact on the historical value of the area, that the woodland in itself, which is the only bit really affected by it, wasn't the reason for that designation. The reason for the designation was the linear form of residential development along the frontage to the site. So we're satisfied that there are no grounds to object to the application as a result of that. These are just some views showing you those areas within the site itself. Is there these are images taken showing these are the conservation areas. This is effectively the frontage to the site. Now we're just going to run through obviously various house types that are being proposed on the site. Again, these are considered appropriate given the style of the area, the mix of types to provide some visual interest within the development site. I'm just giving you again indicative street scenes to show that. And this is the entrance way to the access to the site. So when our heritage consultant responded, the only point they made was that the design of the frontage in terms of the boundary treatment that was proposed, the materials to be used on the frontage house would be suitable for the area. The application was amended in order to deal with that issue, and so that's now deemed to be satisfactory. Again, this is a site plan. And now we get onto the frontage to the site, and I'm sure, as everybody here will assume, the meat of the discussions that I'm sure will follow. So this is as you enter into the village from across the motorway from the eastern direction. And these are a couple of images of 3 modern houses that have already been built at the entrance to the site, forming a small cul-de-sac. These are images taken by myself.
Sorry, could members of the public let the officer be heard, please? Thank you. I do understand how emotive it is, but if you could please let him speak, thanks.
Of the frontage to the site. And they're intended, in fact, they're not intended to show you the traffic situation, they're intended to show you the frontage of the site and where the area is. We've now got some images produced by objectors, which actually show obviously more vehicles parked along that frontage, including some on the footway. Again, similarly, objectors, and this will be around the school time, where quite clearly there is congestion in this area. There's congestion around many schools, as people will be aware, not just in this borough, elsewhere. This is something which happens. It is not unique to this area, and in members' assessment of the transport implications of this development, what you need to look at is whether the proposed development will cause significant harm as a result of any increase in traffic. There is no technical evidence that has been provided from the assessment by the council's own highway engineers in terms of the transport assessment submitted by the applicant, nor in the transport assessment submitted by the objector. There is one element of that where there is a disagreement. However, there is no evidence, there is no technical evidence to show that the increase in traffic will have a significant impact on the highways in that area. It is not the applicant's responsibility to deal with existing issues that may arise during certain times of the day where clearly there is congestion, as I say, as we well know, anywhere around a school in this borough, apart from the ones where we've carried out schemes to deal with that issue, there will be congestion. So there's nothing unique in this. The applicant's proposals will not exacerbate that particular issue. Again, these are taken by myself during the day, showing areas in the frontage of the site. And I think people will be aware that it does get congested there during certain times of the day. It is not like that all the time. And this isn't just a lucky one-off image. That's when you don't need to be told that, you know that that's what areas are like. They're busy at certain times of day, they're not busy at other times of day. Again, taken in an evening, these are photographs submitted by objector to the development. And these are photographs taken by myself. This was 8 o'clock on a weekday evening, and it shows you a situation as it exists there. I have been to the site on other occasions as well, a similar situation. So we're down to the issues in terms of traffic and transportation. So, as I say, there is no evidence that the increase in traffic from any party would actually be significant. Where the objections are shown in terms of the transport report submitted by the objector, and I understand that as at the January meeting, the gentleman will speak on that when he gets his turn, is that the introduction of this access position will in itself, by displacing on-street parking, will cause significant problems and unacceptable highway harm. Obviously, you introduce an entrance, nobody can park on that frontage. However, there are a couple of factors here. Firstly, the new roadway itself actually increases the amount of carriageway that people would be able to park alongside. It's also evident that the loss of parking would be due to people, shall we say, obeying the highway code. That nobody will park Nobody will park within close proximity of that junction. As we've seen from the photographs, if you read the highway code, many of these vehicles are parked in conflict with those requirements. There is no evidence to suggest that that will change, or that the areas, that there will be suddenly a large free area that nobody will park in. So that's got to be considered. What will the impact be, even if it involves a loss of, say, I think it said last time, around 6 car parking spaces on street as a result of that entranceway being put forward? Would that be significant? And what members have to weigh up is that factor against all other planning considerations. And one of those, of course, is this is an allocated housing site. If that development can't, they can tweak this access, but I don't think that overcomes the objection to it. So what that means is that there is no viable scheme there that they could do on this site. As such, you're sterilising that particular site. It's a long-standing allocated site. It forms part of the council's housing land supply. If the development can't take place because of the highway issues, then quite clearly the council would have to find alternatives elsewhere which would deal with that particular issue. So I have to stress that if the highway issues are those, there's no evidence in terms of total increase in traffic. It is about whether the actual impact of this, and I'm sure there will be some discussion, and Wendy will have some comments on that as well, is that significant that it justifies refusal of the application. Obviously members can consider all the other issues as well, but again, that's what you need to do, weigh that up against all the other factors on there. So on that basis, it's recommended that the application be approved subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. We'll start with questions for the officer, and we'll start with Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can you hear me?
Well, I can't because I'm sat next to you.
Well, you can, but can everybody else? Yeah, he's trying to knock me off. So, thanks, Graham. You said there was a net loss of, I think it was 6 parking spaces. Now, on the site, you said there's going to be 2 parking spaces for each property. But will there also be any other additional parking spaces maybe to make up for those 6?
I think the point, no, there's nothing specific. I don't know what the stress of the comment is, so there's nothing there. The point that was being made is that clearly alongside the access to the development site, there is new carriageway. There are houses on one side of that, the new property on one side of that, but there are no properties on the introduction on the opposite side of that. So the point I was making is that whilst you lose some carriageway frontage, you actually gain some carriageway frontage. And as I say, in terms of the demand from the development itself, each of those properties has got 2 parking spaces off street. There's also facility, because of the way the layout works, any visitors, for instance, would also have a space there that they would be able to park. Thank you, Chair.
Want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. So just to be ask again on that one then, because I said the loss of 6 parking spaces, and you said there's potential for others. So would there be a net loss or a net gain, and have we got a figure on that?
Yeah.
So it's not a net loss or gain. The new access will mean that the people that currently park in that particular precise location won't be able to park there in the future because of the new access. What Graham was trying to say is, with the creation of the new highway which will be adopted, there'll be areas away from Ashton Road where people can park if they need to. So, and then this will not, so what I'm about to say won't be a popular statement, but nobody has the right to park on the highway and block, and it's actually classed as an obstruction of the highway. So what we have to do when we assess a planning application is we assess the effect of the development, and that's what we're doing here. We're assessing the effect of the development, and the people who live within the development won't be parking on Ashton Road because they'll have their own parking spaces and there's space within the development for them to park also. So it's the effect of the development on the local highway network, and it has to be severe. It has to be severe. Thank you.
Councillor Holbin.
I lost track then with everybody throwing it in. Graham, there were some more photographs of the traffic situation that were sent through to Highways. I just wondered if they were available for the members to see. I think there was about half a dozen sent in that shown quite a bit of a difference to the ones that have been shown tonight. I just wondered if they were available for the other members on the committee now.
The photographs that were submitted by the objector, he asked for those to be put on the website. They are on the website, so yes.
So can committee members see them tonight?
If members looked on the website where all the details of the application are submitted, they are there. They are publicly available. We do not, as a routine, as you will know.
Sorry, Graham. Again, can I just ask members of the public just to be a bit reserved and let the officers and the councillors debate? Thank you. Graham, if you continue.
Yeah, I think the point is, as members will know, we don't distribute individual representations that have been submitted. So they are placed on the website. So any comments that have been submitted on the application are on the website. In this particular, normally that's just obviously words. So in this particular instance, we were asked whether the submitted photographs would go on the website, along with the other reports and documentation that's submitted by the objector to the development. They are available. So if members want to, they could have looked at those. We will not individually circulate those, nor similarly will we individually circulate information provided by the applicant. So all that information is publicly available. All that information is there on the website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Any Councillor Harkness?
Yeah, just a quick one. So whereabouts on that photograph is the conservation area boundary, and like where's the church as well in that on that photograph there? Just
it's effectively the frontage area, so where you can see the access coming out the top of the picture, and then obviously you've got the green areas either side. So effectively that line, so just to the left of that is the church, with the grounds of the church. That effectively is the back of the conservation area. So everything beyond that is outside that boundary.
Councillor Murphy?
Thank you. Would the chair and the planning officer allow us to get them photographs that have been discussed on us now via the website? 'Cause I'm sure we've got access to the compute, to the internet. Is that okay?
I think we need to be clear of the issue here. We are not disputing that at certain times during the day, particularly at the morning and evening pick-up, drop-off times of the school, there is congestion in that area. I could put as many photographs in. I could also, as I say, I've been down to this site on numerous occasions. I put one or two pictures that I've taken from that area that are typical of what my observation. I could equally put more of those. I'm sure the applicant could similarly have decided, I want those showing. The pictures that I've shown are indicative of what it can be like at certain times of the day. So even if we had those photographs, you know, at a certain time on a certain day it will be like this. But on a certain time on another day, it will be different. We're not disputing there are certain times. The point we're making is that in assessing the application, it is not for the developer to actually deal with that issue. It is whether the introduction of this development will add to the traffic issues to an unacceptable degree. That is the thing. It's not would it add, it's will it be unacceptable. That is the test that you have to judge. That is the test in the National Planning Policy Framework. And we have to repeat the point, which is if an application is refused without substantial evidence to do that, it's quite clear that there will be an appeal against that decision. We know that the applicant has indicated that. An inspector will look at that, an inspector will want to see that evidence, and if that evidence is not produced, as you well know, costs will be awarded against the
Thank you,
council.
Graham. So if we can just reserve ourselves. So just for my benefit, Graham, there is no dispute, there is congestion at certain times of the day, but that's not a material factor that would stand up on appeal, should this, or it's not material grounds to object. Is that how I am hearing it?
Yeah, I'll take that. So the fundamental point is, as you say, we're not disputing that at times there can be congestion, there can be multiple parked cars and what have you. All we can assess is whether this development would have a significant impact to make that worse. And the conclusion that we've drawn from the evidence available to us is that it wouldn't. Right. And so that's what we have to consider. It's not simply the fact that there is congestion already, occasionally.
Councillor Murphy?
Thanks, Chair. I'm listening to what you're saying, but for me, this application, the biggest concerns I have with it is about the impact on the highway. And for me to understand the full picture, they say an image speaks 1,000 words. I'd like to see them images. Please.
So,
sorry, and then the committee can decide whether we feel it's a significant impact. Thank you.
So Councillor Murphy, to respond to that, can I ask, how would you expect us to show a picture of what it will look like after the development? It's not there yet. So what we're asking you to do, yes it is, that's what I'm explaining to you. What you're being asked to do is to compare the current situation with what we anticipate it will be like. And we can't show you two photos to directly compare that. That's my point.
So I'm not asking you to get in the DeLorean and jibby into the future, take a couple of pictures, bring it back, ready in time for the committee. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound facetious there. What I'm asking for is to see what it currently looks like, so I can see the impact that that development would have in addition to what they're creating. So, but we're just seeing the pictures that we've already seen.
Yeah, but through you, Chair, I'm not quite sure what you want. This image, which is taken, shows congestion. It also shows why there is congestion there, which is the way vehicles are parked. Following the development, that situation will not be any different. So the test that needs to be answered is whether this development causes a significant harm as a result of any increase in traffic. There is no evidence to do that. We could show 1 million pictures, but that doesn't solve that. It doesn't prove it one way or the other.
2,000 cars go past there every morning between.
So I can't be on my own in wanting to see these pictures. I can't be the only planning committee member. So we can just pause, adjourn the meeting for a moment.
No, just let me speak, please, Councillor Murphy. I think an image is a snapshot, obviously, at a certain time of day, and you get that. So obviously we've displayed a number of pictures here. We could display many more pictures. I believe Councillor Russ, did you have them? I'm happy for you to pass them round. Sorry, I've been told. Sorry, I've been told that's not. Yeah, Peter, could you explain why my...
So we've been very clear throughout. It's a standard thing that you cannot distribute additional papers at a committee meeting. One member or an objector or anyone else cannot distribute them. The images are on the website. All councillors have had access to that and to be able to prepare for the meeting, to see all the documents on the website. So they are all there for you to look at now, and you've had, when was it? Let me see when it was put, when it was actually put on the website. Those photos were put on the website on the 14th of January.
Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I take on board what Peter's just said, but as these materials are already in the public domain, it wouldn't be the presentation of new materials for consideration of committee, would it not? So is there any, if the materials already exist in the public domain, then there's no harm in distributing them in physical form?
Okay, thanks for clarification from the Borough Solicitor. I'm happy for Councillor Rustage to pass round his images for viewing.
Invite the objector to speak.
I've got a couple and then.
Oh, okay. Just don't realise there was some waiting. Sorry.
Sorry, could we clarify what time of day the images were taken? Sorry, I know, I genuinely appreciate your frustration, but members of the public are not allowed to speak or influence councillors, and I'm sorry about that. Well, we as committee members, we apply to the rules. We don't make, we don't make them up as we go along. We have a framework, so. But there we go. Okay, Councillor Charters.
So, with regards to the highway issue, Graham and Wendy both said it needs to demonstrate a significant impact as part of the rules. Can you explain to us and for the public what significant impact means? Because it seems to be a very subjective thing, and I was trying to check the NPPF to see if there was any more concrete way of saying it, but could you just give us an indication of what significant impact means?
So the precise wording of the NPPF is development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe. So the key words are unacceptable, which is a pretty high bar, and severe. Unacceptable impact on highway safety and severe impact on the road network. That's on paragraph 1.11 of your committee report.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to call the objector to speak, Mr. Jamie Ellis.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Committee. My name is Jamie.
Sorry, Jamie, could you do me the honour of coming and sitting at the front? Then?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. How are you today? Okay. So you get 3 minutes, Jamie, when you start, and then we get the opportunity to ask you questions. Are you okay?
Yep. Thank
when
you,
you're
Chair.
ready.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Committee. My name is Jamie Ellis. I'm an Associate Director at Edison's Transport Planning. I've been advising residents on the highway implications of the proposed development. Our report submitted for this consultation provided detailed evidence of the local highway and parking issues and how those issues would be exacerbated by the proposed development. Those matters were discussed at the last Planning Committee, but I do not have time to repeat them all this evening. The original development drawings showed double yellow lines at the site access. This was to provide enough space for large vehicles to access the site and to prevent vehicles from parking too close to the junction and blocking the required visibility displays. Paragraph 11.12 of the committee report now states that those double yellow lines are not considered necessary and they have been removed from the scheme. The access proposal now relies on motorists obeying the highway code, i.e. not parking within 10 metres either side of the junction in order to not block visibility displays or large vehicle movements. However, when considering existing parking activity, our photographic evidence and even Google Street View shows cars parking within the existing Ashton Road roundabout junction to the west of the site. The highway code approach is therefore not successful in this area. It is therefore reasonable to assume that cars would park adjacent to the proposed access junction in reality. This is also consistent with Committee Report paragraph 1.13 and 1.14. We have submitted new technical evidence that shows how cars parked in those locations would block driver visibility sight lines, creating a highway safety issue. That evidence also shows how those same parked vehicles would block access for large vehicles to and from the site, such as refuse vehicles, which would also impact on highway safety. If double yellow lines are proposed in response to that parking activity, their implementation will be subject to a public consultation. The results of a resident survey is in our report, which show that the vast majority of residents and the church will object to a traffic regulation order. The church have also objected to development on highways and safety grounds, and a TRO, a traffic regulation order, is separate to a planning application and may be refused. The proposed development will result in the net loss of 12 existing on-street parking spaces from Ashton Road. The application information fails to sufficiently address existing parking and congestion issues that occur in general, and particularly at school drop-off and pick-up times. There is insufficient on-street parking to fully accommodate school activity. The school is 65 metres from the site boundary. The committee report states that some lost parking would be replaced along the proposed access road. However, considering the existing parking habits, we expect increased parking to occur by the school and adjacent to the new junction before the more remote location of the site road would be used for parking. The use of the site access road for public parking did not form part of the original site design and would be undesirable for residents of a new development. It could also affect access by large vehicles. As previously discussed, thank you, the above issues would be removed by using an alternative site access closer to the motorway. I understand that the owner of the alternative access has offered to work with Jones Homes to deliver a better access, but Jones Homes has refused. It appears that any initial issues with the alternative access could be overcome if there was a willingness to do so. It is therefore our view that the application should be refused on the grounds of highway safety and impact on the conservation area. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jamie. So it's nice to have an expert, really, in front of us on such matters, and your field of expertise is obviously highways. Okay. So could you just explain to me what material grounds we could have for refusing this, and why that goes against my officer's recommendations? Thank
you. The additional evidence we've submitted for this committee are two main drawings showing the site access. I believe we're all in agreement in terms of the committee reports and the information that we've submitted that the use of the highway code as a parking control mechanism doesn't work in this area. We can see at the Ashton Road roundabout that there are cars parked in close proximity, in fact on the roundabout really, in terms of they are not 10 metres away, they're on the roundabout, and the other evidence we've submitted in terms of the photographs show that double yellow lines are frequently ignored and people park on the pavements, etc. So I think we're all in agreement that the highway code as a control mechanism wouldn't be appropriate in this area. So in that case, the cars we think will park close to the school, and we think the cars would park close to the proposed access junction. The drawings we have shown include the visibility displays from the transport assessment, which shows the visibility that must be required at the site access junction for safe movement to and from the site. The parked cars, which would be in close proximity to the junction, would obstruct those visibility displays. So that's one of the reasons why we're saying in highways safety terms there is insufficient visibility at the proposed access junction.
Sorry, Jamie, just to come into there.
Yeah.
Just for my understanding, it's not a material consideration for this committee if people break the law. Do you understand what I mean? By saying people will not follow the rules or park on double yellow lines is not, in my view, I don't see that as a material grounds. And you know, we're in an ideal world, everyone would follow these rules, but we lay down judgments based on the rules. Are you with me?
Yes. We have an obligation to provide a safe means of access, and if we can see from existing activity, and in fact, if the applicant themselves are agreeing that that activity takes place, it seems remiss of us to not take that into account, that the junction would be safe or would not be safe. The other component to this parking in proximity to the junction would be the double yellow lines, which we've said would require public consultation to implement. And again, our report and the evidence in there shows that they would not have local support for that. So again, as a control mechanism, we think it's not there. The other component in terms of this as well is if those cars do park there, aside from the visibility, we've shown some swept path analysis of a refuse vehicle that shows the space isn't there for a refuse vehicle to turn in or out. So again, that's a highway safety concern because there could be a large vehicle blocking their carriageway and not allowing safe movement, and again, issues perhaps for pedestrians as well. So there are our main points in terms of this access. And whilst we haven't in our report discussed traffic capacity and those matters, we have focused on the parking and the access point and how there is an alternative that would remove those parking and visibility issues.
Thank you, Jamie. And just lastly from me, I think everyone is in agreement that the other alternative access point would be far more suitable, and you seem to be in agreement with that. However, I just want to stipulate that's not within the gift of this committee, and private landowners have the right to interact and sell and develop with who they wish. So that is not something, obviously, as an option we can consider. Is why we're back here, Jamie. Yeah? And it's just that because you mentioned it. You with me?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, that was the reason for deferral last time to have those conversations. And again, it seems remiss to us not to have those conversations if we can provide a workable and a better solution all round. I do believe that Councillor Rustage has some more information on those discussions as well, but that's outside of what I've been dealing with.
Thank you, Jamie. Do we have any questions? Councillor Holbin?
Yeah, I know that you've said, Chair, that we're not here to determine whether people break the law or not when parking, but I do think that could be taking away the committee's ideas on the highway safety issue, which is what was put forward. I know that we're not here to decide the law on who parks where, but I think that was quite dismissal of you to say that it wasn't a highway safety issue, or to intimate that, because I think the members on the committee need to know that if it is a safety issue, whether or not we enforce the law or make the law, it's a safety issue on the highway, and that's what we should be looking at.
Sorry, just to respond there, Councillor Aubrey. I've been advised that we have to judge an application on the assumption people follow the rules and the law. But I do take your point, Councillor Aubrey. Any more questions? Councillor Davis?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You mentioned about objecting on environmental issues as well, didn't you? So what could you elaborate on that?
Yes, thank you. It was just a link back to our previous committee, where I did touch on the fact that there were trees removed as part of the access creation. I haven't had time to obviously cover that in terms of my speech this time round, but it was just to link back to the same reason for objection that we were suggesting at the last committee. It was the removal of trees for the production of the site access.
If I can just come back on that, when trees are removed, there's usually agreement that they're replaced with so many trees. I mean, maybe when we open it up to questioning, we could question and ask them if that's the case.
Thank you. Yes, just to quickly come back, obviously I'm trying to represent a relatively large group from the Residents Association, and that was a point that they've made, so it was the right time to put it into my presentation, but thank you.
Any more? Well, thank you, Jamie. Thanks for your input. I'd now like the applicant to come forward. Representative Vincent Ryan. He comes last. You know the drill?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Vincent Ryan. I'm a planning director at Stantec, and I'm speaking on behalf of Jones Homes. Your office's report at paragraphs 1.1 to 1.17 summarises the current situation clearly and succinctly, and I respectfully urge the committee to follow the advice of your professional officers in that respect. To remind the committee of some of the key considerations in this case, the Council's support for the principle of developing this site for housing goes back as far as the adoption of the UDP in July 2006, where it was allocated as a Phase 2 housing site. Then again in 2009, when the site was a saved housing allocation, and then again under the current local plan, when it was adopted in November 2011. The site forms part of the Council's claimed housing land supply for the next 5 years, and is a proposed allocation in the emerging local plan. Therefore, the Council's support for the development of this site for housing cannot be questioned. In addition to the principle of development, the detail of the development is also in accordance with local and national planning policy in all other respects, such as on matters of design, highway safety, heritage and ecology. Your officers confirm this very clearly in the report, and of particular importance is that the proposed access arrangement in the planning application before you is perfectly acceptable from a highway safety perspective. At the committee meeting in January, the application was deferred for Jones Homes to explore an alternative access arrangement. Jones Homes did not ask for this deferral, and there was no requirement for them to do so, for planning or for any other reasons. Since the previous meeting, however, it has been explained to local ward councillors and residents' association representatives why an access from the east cannot and will not be pursued. There are many reasons for this, but the key ones are firstly, following an initial pre-application engagement with officers a number of years ago, it became apparent that a technically compliant highway scheme would not physically fit on the land that is potentially available to the east. Secondly, even if access could be delivered using an alternative option, it would reduce the number of homes that could be built, including reduction in the number of affordable homes. Thirdly, the cost, delays, and reduction in the value of the site associated with switching to a different access arrangement could render the development as a whole unviable, or at the very least remove the ability to deliver any affordable housing. And finally, Jones Homes is contractually required to pursue the scheme currently before you. I have no doubt that if this planning application were refused and appealed, the appeal would be successful, wasting time and resources for all involved, instead of pressing ahead to deliver much needed new housing that fully accords with Oldham's development plan. I therefore ask members to accept the advice of your officers and support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I'd just again say, obviously, when people are speaking, I know feelings are obviously emotive, and but if we could just please minimise, please. So just for me, Vincent, I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about this second access point, which is obviously a lot of people feel would be more suitable. But obviously, as that's not within the council's gift, it would be for you, the developer, and for the other parties involved to basically negotiate with yourselves. And you're absolutely adamant at this point that no such agreement can be achieved, and nor should it. Is that basically what you?
Yes, as you say, it's not relevant, but at the end of the day, there was a discussion around the use of that site some time ago, and that didn't proceed. And there are technical reasons why it can't, and other reasons that I've explained.
Sorry, again, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So did I hear right then when you said if there was agreement, I'm not, you know, it wasn't, but if there was, that access point wasn't adequate anyway. I mean, is that the case?
That's correct. Yes, it's not wide enough.
Please, can we? You know, I don't want to clear the public from the room or anything like that, but please, can we have the debate, please, and give everyone the opportunity to speak and be heard? Thank you. You've got your representatives and your councillor, you know, will be afforded the time. Please, can we allow the applicant as well?
Thank you. Yes, there's a section of unregistered land, which means that we cannot achieve the widths that meet Oldham's requirements for the highway width and the footpath width.
Councillor Holbin.
Thanks, Chair. There's some kind of discrepancy with this. Had the alternative access been used, there's a feeling that they could have built more homes instead of less. We're down to 41 now with the access as it is, and you're saying it couldn't be viable, but it was 46 homes were viable with the other access. Is that right? So you could have had 5 more homes had you had gone through the alternative access.
Not based on the current mix, no.
Sorry, Peter, you'd like to come in there?
Yeah, so appreciate the applicant's already answered, but we need to focus on the scheme before us. The option of another access is not before us. It is not relevant to deciding this application. And I appreciate that, but we need to focus on the application before us because it's not it has no bearing on our decision. It can have no bearing. If it did, the decision would be legally challengeable. So I think we need to focus on what's before us and assess that, not any alternative that is not on the table. Appreciate that, but I'm just clarifying for everyone's benefit that we need to focus on the scheme before us.
I think the other point is the reason for the deferral has not been resolved. And that resolution is not within the gift of ONBC or this council. That was the point I was making, just for clarification. Do we have any... Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. So, putting aside what the planning officer said in the opening statement and the statement that the applicants provided in the committee papers, I'd like to ask the applicant, you obviously was in attendance at the last planning committee meeting and you understand some of the concerns that the residents have. And the plan of deferral, the idea of it, was to go away to see if everybody could get their heads together and come up with a solution. So, this is your opportunity to shine. And can you tell me what engagement you've had with local councillors and residents to try and alleviate the concerns that the committee members had, please? Thank you.
Well, I mean, firstly, there was nothing wrong with the access on the table, and that was made clear. And it was not, I repeat, it was not obviously a request of Jones Homes that we go away and negotiate an alternative access. What we did agree to do was explain why we could not use an alternative access, and we did that. So we met with local ward councillors, and Jones Homes met with representatives of the Residents Association and made that clear. There needs to be a problem with the existing access before you, which there is not, which council officers have advised on.
Councillor Hobin.
Thanks, Chair. I know that we've met as the ward councillor and yourselves, and you've met with the village association. Did you have any correspondence, or did you meet, as the deferral was about the access, did you meet with the alternative access provider at any point, or have discussions with them regarding the deferral? I've been advised the question is irrelevant.
So, again, it goes back to the same point I was making before. We have to look at what's before us. I appreciate the reason that was given for the deferral. If you recollect, I did say on that night, this is not a suitable reason for deferral, but the committee still chose to do that. And the reason it's not suitable is because there is no obligation on the applicant to consider an alternative access. As Graham has outlined in his report as well, even if there was another solution, it would not be part of this application. It would have to be a completely new application and what have you. So Jones Homes and the applicant have every right to ask this committee to make a decision on this proposal, and that's what we have to focus on.
Thank you. Councillor Lancaster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by saying I have respect for the professionalism of Mr. Richards and all the other planning officers, but I don't think it's appropriate to try and stifle or frustrate any line of questioning from elected members of the planning committee. We're here to do a question and answer and scrutinise applications in front of us. It seems appropriate for a question to be heard and an answer given, and maybe after that point we can then say that's outside the bounds of material planning considerations, but we shouldn't have questions stifled at the moment that they're asked, in my opinion.
I understand, Councillor Lancaster, but in your own words, you're here to scrutinise the application before you, and that's what I'm trying to focus you on.
Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry to give the planning officers grey hairs or anything like that. So I'm just going to come back. I'm going to ask the question in a slightly different manner. The last time this application was before the committee, we all expressed concerns over highways and the impact on the surrounding network. I'm really glad I saw them photographs earlier, because I saw drives on there, which was something I'd not seen on the planning officer's pictures. When the whole idea of deferral was to go away, to come up with a solution that would address the concerns we all had about highway safety. Now, the question I'm going to ask you, because I'm mindful that the officers will say, well, it's not relevant, and I hate that, because it absolutely is. It's relevant to us, it's relevant to these. So, have you gone away and looked at ways of addressing the concerns that the planning committee members have got in relation to highway safety?
Well, obviously you've asked the same question in a different way. There's a risk I'll give the same answer in a different way. What we did was go away and explain why we are pursuing the existing access, why we believe it's safe, and all the submissions by the applicant and the officer's report and the highways officer's comments show that the existing access is acceptable. But we explained, as I said, to local ward councillors that we would not be considering the alternative access because there's nothing wrong with the existing proposal, and there are reasons why we would not wish to pursue the alternative access.
Please, Cam, Applicant Cameron. I think that's it for the applicant. Thank you for your expressions, Vincent. And I'd like to call forward Councillor Rustage, who's going to speak on behalf of residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Committee. As a local councillor representing this area, I'm here to advise the committee members of significant concerns of local residents, of which many have contacted me. Whilst the development is not wanted, local residents reluctantly accept the principle which has been set out by the site's allocation for housing. The initial public consultation generated over 400 objections to the application, mainly relating to the development impact on the highway safety, especially for existing residents, Woodhouses Primary School and Woodhouses Church. I have first-hand experience of the traffic problems in Woodhouses, especially on the section of Ashton Road where the access is currently proposed. This section of road is very tight, with narrow footpaths, and although it's designated as a 20 miles an hour zone, the speed limit is exceeded constantly, and highway safety is a significant concern. The majority of houses on Ashton Road have more cars than driveway parking spaces, forcing them to park any access cars on Ashton Road, right where the access is proposed, which can be very congested just from the residents' parking. This is further compounded at pick-up and drop-off times for Woodhouse Primary School, which is just 65 metres from the site boundary. Parents dropping off and collecting their children cause a massive amount of congestion at the start and the end of each school day. And I have lost the count of the number of residents who said to me, it's only a matter of time until someone is killed. Events at the church, which is next to the site, also generate a lot of parked cars at services and evening events. The land proposed for access was used for parking at church events, but this has been lost. The church have objected to the development of highways on safety grounds, and on-street parking demands for periods of an hour plus are common, particularly during services, funerals, weddings and functions. Existing residents' parking plus parking demand from the primary school and church cause severe congestion at peak periods. Outside of peak periods, the 20 miles an hour speed limit is regularly exceeded, making the stretch of road particularly dangerous. Only a few days after the last planning committee, I saw footage of a car exiting the village at significant speed and crashing into the fence just before the motorway. This car was moving much faster than the 20 miles an hour speed limit. One resident of Ashton Road recently lost a house sale because of these development proposals. Many issues local residents have with the development would be alleviated if an alternative access was used to the east of the allocation. It's furthest away from the primary school and the church and would not affect parking for existing residents. The last planning committee resolved to defer this application in order that Jones Homes could fully investigate using the access to minimise the impacts on the residents of Woodhouses. It also required further consultation with local residents, which hasn't taken place as far as I am aware. I've been made aware of the discussions between the owner of the alternative access and Jones Home. The owner of the alternative access is willing to work with local councillors and Woodhouses Village Association to reach a fair and reasonable compromise to use the access to minimise the impact on local residents. They'd offered Jones Homes the following: an independent market valuation to involve the council's estate team to ensure transparency for council officers and planning committee members, a meeting with Jones Homes with local councillors presidents to reach a fair compromise. All of the above have been refused by Jones Homes. They now cite other barriers stopping the site being feasible, which I understand can be easily resolved if there's just willingness from Jones Homes to do, which is clear there isn't. Jones Homes have also advised that using alternative access to lose them 3 houses from making the scheme unviable. Whereas I've seen a layout produced by the applicant using the alternative access which shows 5 more houses than currently proposed. The alternative access has not been properly explored in my view. If the application is improved in its current form, the impact on local residents will be felt for decades afterwards. Using the alternative access would take away much of the development impact and then minimise the impact on local residents. The application should be refused on highways safety grounds. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. You're demonstrating there what a seasoned credit as a councillor you are to your community, so I thank you for that, and I'm sure the residents do. However, quite a lot of what you've said, passionately I might add, I must say isn't relevant to the planning application, and we must be serious about that. So for instance, the people that speed drive at, third parties involvement, etc., etc. In an ideal world, but we don't live in one, do we? So it's just purely on the grounds that he's put before us. But I'm opening up now to yeah, Councillor Charters.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Rustage, just a quick one, because the report we've got here mentions that the applicant met with Councillor Hobin and Councillor Hindle. I'm just wondering if you've had any interaction with the applicant or with the Residents Association, because we don't have that information.
Yeah, I've seen the Residents Association, but they haven't met with me. Thank you.
cut myself off. Anybody else? Councillor Holbein?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ken. Can you, for the benefit of the committee, Ken, can you confirm that ward councillors have set money aside because of the highways in Woodhouses, that the ward councillors have set aside funding to, because it's that bad, we've set aside funding to have the traffic surveys done in Woodhouses?
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Brian. Yes, I have pushed that and pushed officers on many occasions to support our local residents and to get these services done, the traffic surveys done, and to do them at these busy times, not to come, you know, during the day when it's quiet, you know, when the schools are opening and closing and so on and so forth. So the local councillors have really pushed our people to do that, and I believe that one is due imminently. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy?
Thanks, Chair. Can you tell me about the parking problems that the residents face? Is it just that? And I think I already know the answer. I just want to hear it from you. It's not just that school kicking out and obviously worse in the afternoon. I'm just trying to build up a picture on how significant parking issues and highway issues are at that location. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Very good question. I would say, you know, I've seen that personally, that the parking is not just at those times, it's other times. I was down there a few weeks ago and the dustbin wagon was coming past and traffic couldn't get in. There was so much cars parked on that, it's such a narrow access, they couldn't get through. And what worried me is the danger if someone, God forbid, something happens to a child at those times, because you really can't see. It's really too narrow, and I think this is a very, very important point. Thank you.
Councillor Hurley?
Thank you. And thank you for that, Ken, as well. The last time we were here, myself and other committee members, we were concerned about two things. Primarily the safety of the road and also the lack of consultation. For me, today, nothing has changed. There's still been no consultation with these residents and there has been no alternative even tried to be found. So Jones Homes made their decision by bringing it back here today, and I've made mine. I will be voting against it.
Peter? You wanted to speak before we went to the floor?
Oh, sorry, yes. I wasn't sure if anybody else had. So, before we move into the wider debate amongst the councils and the committee, I just wanted to reiterate a few things so we can focus the discussion. We cannot take account of any alternative access that is not on the table as part of the plans. We have to assess the application before us. That is the rules we have to work within in terms of the planning framework and the national legislation. We have to assess what's before us. Likewise, while I appreciate the reasons for the request for the deferral, even if you don't feel that the applicant consulted further in a way that you would like, or has not considered the alternative access further, that is not relevant, because that is not part of the decision before you. Obviously, the focus of the debate has been on highways and parking issues. So again, I remind you that, first of all, what we're looking at is a comparison between what happens now and what we think it would be like. So if there is, we've all acknowledged there can be existing issues at the moment, whether it be bin wagons, whether it be parking, whether it be congestion at school times or other times. They exist now. The question is, would 41 dwellings make that significantly different and significantly worse? And the wording, as I said earlier, of the MPPF is about unacceptable impact on highway safety or severe impact on the highway network. That's the test in that particular issue. You have our officer's view on that. We feel that the scheme is acceptable in highways terms and it should be granted. Even if you disagree on the highways point, again, as members of the committee will be familiar with, we're always dealing with a balance in planning. There are we've talked a lot about highways and that kind of thing tonight. There are many other aspects to this scheme which are positive. And you have to weigh the balance. So the question is, if you disagree with us on the highways matters, is that so severe and so significant that it outweighs all the other positives of the development? And that's the job of the committee in making this decision. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Peter. Councillor Hoban.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Peter. And I know the members of the public and the members of the committee will be frustrated that we keep getting told what we can and what we can't decide on. But I do think, I don't know if there's any other councillors want to get in on this, but I do think at this moment in time, the impact on highway safety has got to be our main concern. I think the residents have consigned themselves to the thought that at some point this piece of land there's going to be development on, and I think, you know, they've come to terms with that. But the actuality of I was going to say the ins and outs of it, but that's access, isn't it? But the actuality of the position that we've got in front of us, I don't think at this moment in time we can say that it is not going to have an impact on highway safety, because, and the Chair mentioned about not being able to control the law and where people park, but we've got to take that into consideration. And when you look at that outlet of that estate and the narrowness of the road and the condition of the road, I think with cars parked on the entrance and on the Ashton Road entrance to it, we're asking for trouble if we let that go ahead as it is, because that's going to be a major safety issue. And on that note, I'm going to move for refusal.
So, just to come in on that, Councillor Hoban, can you be clear then, if you put a motion for refusal, can we specify, let's read it out if you like, what is your reason for refusal?
Impact on highway safety,
okay.
Which significant impact on highway safety.
Okay, thank you.
Wendy, could you please come in and give your thoughts on.
So I'll just run through why I think that the impact on highway safety isn't a reason to refuse the application, and the way that I have to assess things. So when we receive a transport assessment, So when we receive a transport assessment as part of the submission, it tells us what the conditions are now, and then what this size of development in this sort of area, the amount of traffic it would likely generate. It's an industry-wide methodology that is used. We question it, so as the local highway authority, we won't allow anything on our highway or to be adopted by us that we're not happy with. So the report that was submitted, the transport assessment that was submitted, showed that for a development of this type and size in this area is likely to generate an additional 33 movements in and out in the morning peak, and an additional 32 two-way movements during the PM peak. The peak hours that were considered, which includes the times when, or the peak hours that were considered, which also looked at the existing traffic conditions, were 7:45 to 8:45 in the morning, and 16:45 and 17:45 in the evening. So the additional amount of traffic likely to be generated is one additional vehicle movement every 2 minutes across the hour.
Again, we're here to listen to the office, not to dispute them. Thank you.
one of the things, so we've acknowledged that we know what the problems are on Ashton Road now, and nobody is saying that the congestion doesn't occur and that traffic doesn't happen on Ashton Road. What we've got to look at is the effect, and we've said this so many times this evening, the effect of that development on Ashton Road. So there won't be any additional parking from the new development residents on Ashton Road. There will be additional parking available for others that currently park on Ashton Road to park within the development. So that's a change, but that's a positive change because that will take some of the parking away from Ashton Road. So we can either acknowledge that we've got congestion. If we've got congestion, we haven't got road speeds. You're still going to have congestion at the times when we have congestion now when the development's built. So you're not going to have speeding traffic when the children are being picked up from school. Another one of the benefits is we've asked the developer, acknowledging these issues that happen now, we've asked the developer to provide a highway improvement which will involve improving the existing features on Ashton Road. They have to do that. It's an obligation of the planning application if it gets permission. And I would also say that if we're saying that, so the two things I look at are traffic generation and additional parking demand on Ashton Road. There will be no additional parking demand on Ashton Road as a result of the development. If I know we're not considering this, but I'm just going to remind you that if we had an alternative access nearby on Ashton Road, where the development of the three houses is, the traffic generation from the development will be exactly the same. Because we've got the same number of houses or a similar number of houses, and we've got the same movement, same traffic generation and movements in the morning and evening peak. So that's how I've made the assessment of this application.
Thank you, Wendy. You've had, I think, another. I'm just going to see if someone's going to second your. Oh, okay, that's fine. Sorry. Yeah, please.
Thanks, Wendy. And I know that we cross swords quite often with parking and that, and I know that you have to abide by national statistics and all that. But the number of movements and the parking and the speed, all that combined with, if you just look at, and I'm asking committee members here, if you look at the plan, coming out of the development onto Ashton Road, it's got to be a major safety issue because of the parking that will be on the either side of that inlet. And that's my concern, that the road isn't going to be wide enough for trucks, and there's going to be parking right up to the inlet, and that's where the safety issue is. It's not necessarily the amount of number of movements, which we'd disagree with anyway. It's that access onto Ashton Road from the development that I think is going to have the massive impact on safety.
So the access that's been that will be provided is a standard that we use across the borough. So the carriageways are wide enough, the footways are wide enough, the footway provision along Ashton Road will be improved as a result of this development also. If I can just talk about the issue of the double yellow lines that the objector spoke about. They were originally shown on the drawing, but as a highway authority, we usually wait to see if there's a problem before we consider them. So we took them away because we didn't think they would be very popular, and we were relying on people not parking at the junction because it's the safety of the children in the area that's at stake. As part of the highway improvement scheme, we could provide the double yellow lines. So if that was a concern, we can do that. And yes, it will be advertised separately, and there is an opportunity for local residents and stakeholders to object. But if it's a safety issue, we could consider the placing of double yellow lines so that access will be safe. And it's a standard a design of a standard that's used throughout the borough.
Over to you then, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Judging this on its own application, on its own merit, judging it what I can see so far, if I was more happier with the safety scheme and the highway impact and the concerns I've got with that, although I wouldn't be jumping up and down about building on a cuddly green field, I'd have nowhere else to go with it. But as it stands, I feel like we do. And I feel that we have gone over the threshold for significant, and I feel that there was an opportunity to address and make things better, and I feel that the applicant could have done more, but didn't because, for whatever reason, whether they felt that they didn't have to, or they didn't want to, or whatever, that would have made me happier and have had nowhere else to go but to vote for it. I wouldn't have been happy about it, but I'd have been supporting it. But as it stands, from what I've heard tonight, from some of the images that I've seen, from the discussions that I've had with the officers, I do feel that the significant threshold has been passed, and for that reason, I'll move second the refusal based on significant highway concerns.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murphy. Before we go to the vote, I'd just like to comment. To reject this application, in an ideal world, that would mean the developer would then renegotiate with other parties for a different, more suitable access in people's eyes. Unfortunately, the likelihood the developer will appeal the decision, and it is my understanding from advice given, we would be in a position to lose that appeal. So I just ask members to be mindful beyond that as well. And can you come in there, Peter?
Excuse me, Chair. Can I just comment, Chair, on your statement then? I don't think it's fair to try and determine what a planning inspector is going to do at an appeal.
Well, you've done it to me, Councillor Holbin, on many occasions.
I think, to add to what Councillor Holbin has said, obviously we can give our professional opinion as officers. And ultimately, yes, I would concur with what Councillor Hintz has said, that the likelihood there would be an appeal, the likelihood is we would lose that appeal because we have weighed all those factors up as officers. And again, we have to raise it. I know it's not a popular thing to raise, but we do have to raise it. We're obliged to. There is a realistic chance of costs being awarded against us. In a case like this, where we're talking about a major housing application, we would likely be looking at either a hearing or an inquiry, so the costs are even more significant. It might end up involving barristers and what have you, all those costs and what have you, that if that's applied, that's a significant sum of money that we have to consider. So we have to spell that out to you, and you know that. That's all I'm doing. That's it.
So we have a mover and a seconder.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. Sorry.
Sorry, Peter.
Because it's a refusal against officer recommendation, a member of the committee must be prepared to put forward the appeal.
And do we decide that now, yeah?
Yes.
So should it be rejected, do we have a member of the committee who would come forward and defend the... and please note, Councillor Holbin has indicated he would defend any appeal against rejection. So we are voting on the premises to reject the application.
Point of order, Chair. Isn't the solicitor supposed to make a statement at this point?
Yes, is that the case?
In theory, Councillor Harkness, the legal position has been very well stated by the Chair and Peter Richards, but they're both totally correct. Any decision to refuse should be based on valid planning reasons. The applicant has obviously clearly intimated that they're going to appeal, so we would have to be prepared for an appeal. But in essence, the position has been clearly stated.
The final thought from Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, the head of planning has given us a flip side of the coin with the appeals process. I'm going to give you another flip side, that the applicant could go away and investigate that second alternative. They could add extra houses to it. And the ward member has already said there is an appetite for that to happen. So they don't have to appeal. They can actually do things and address our concerns and theirs. So there isn't, we don't have to just go down the appealing process. You could actually do what we asked you to do the first time, and I'd ask you to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Peter?
I do think you're being a bit unfair, Councillor Murphy, there. I think there was the job of this committee is a regulatory function. So we are obliged to consider the application before us, and the applicant, if we refuse it, has every right to appeal. That is the system. They are not obliged to look at other options.
I think that was the reason for the deferment, wasn't it, originally, in the hope that parties would, and that has failed. Okay, so just to get back on track, so to speak, we've had a proposal, a seconder to reject the scheme. All in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Against? 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a draw. So what my casting vote wins? The motion is rejected. No, is that right? The motion's rejected. Yeah.
The motion, just to clarify.
Okay, no. Can you clarify that?
So the motion is rejected, the application has not been refused.
Mr. Chairman, I think you get the casting vote in the case of a tie.
Yeah, that's why.
Well, how are you voting? Yeah, but then you get a casting vote.
My casting vote was in the vote.
No, but then if it's drawn, you get a casting vote, including your vote.
Well, my vote has already been included.
No, I know, you voted as a committee member, and now it's drawn. You get the casting vote as the chairman.
I vote to reject the motion.
So can you just explain to the public, obviously they got the wrong end of that then, our proposal and the second to refuse it has been turned down?
Yes. It's been officiated and verified. Okay.
Just as a matter of interest, then, what was the numbers? Because I didn't look around.
7-all.
Just to be clear, do you want to all do it again? Should we
Yes.
just vote again?
Can you?
All those for the motion, can you put your hands up, please?
Can we have a recorded vote then?
Yeah.
Can you put your hands up? Can you put your hands up, all those for the motion? And then alternative, please. So it's 7, so the chair now gets a casting vote. Yeah, it's 7. Yes.
Don't argue with your audience. We're running a committee.
7-all, isn't it?
7-all, yeah.
Yeah, it's 7-all, so you get...
There's 14 in attendance.
Yeah, so it's 7-all and the chair gets a casting vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could I request the borough solicitor explain this again to us?
It's 7 votes all, isn't it? Yeah. If it's a draw, the chair gets a vote, a second vote.
Could you clarify the numbers, please, Alex? It was 7-all, wasn't it?
It was 7-all, so the chair then gets a second vote as the casting vote. That's how it works.
And my casting vote is to reject
the motion.
So when there's a death on the road, I should going to stand up and say, I vote just because there will be a death on that road.
When I nearly got taken off with my granddaughter the other day when I was putting her in the car to go home, are you going to be responsible? Are you?
I am not responsible for people's illegal driving. Okay.
Yeah, it's done.
Okay, that's that item. So, sorry. The motion's been rejected, so now. No, okay. So, do I have someone who's going to put forward? Councillor Charters, and you're proposing
I'll second that.
to approve. All in favour? Against? So it's again, it's 7-7, and I use my casting vote to approve. Thank you. I'm now going to call a break. Thank you.
Get a drink after that.
Yeah.
To item 7, Denton Farm, Chadderton.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application, another full application for 101 dwellings on a site located within the Denton strategic allocation. The proposal is for a development which would be accessed through Horton Close, which is a road on an existing phase of development. So this is basically phase R3, the other phase R2. That then links through that residential estate onto Lydia Becker Way. So as I say, this is part of an allocation for that purpose. Yeah, the right way again. So this image is showing you the application site itself. So on the left hand side of the image is the existing phase of development, and obviously then the site itself comprises a mix of existing buildings which have been used as a stabling establishment and fields associated with that establishment. Again, this just gives you the wider element of that. And I think put this one on for another reason is that what members will see from the report, one of the major issues raised by residents is concern about access to the development. And one of the points made similarly is whether an alternative access to the site would be available. And two suggestions were put forward. The first is to do with Horseshoe Lane, which is the road that you'll see at the bottom of that picture, which comes out on the site onto Denton Lane. That access has been not considered appropriate due to its width, due to the lack of adequate footways. As Wendy would explain, it would not meet modern adoptable standards. The other alternative is to go directly north onto Lydia Becker Way. However, that is a site which is currently allocated for a commercial development, and we actually have an application in at the moment for that development, which unfortunately has not been ready for determination at this stage. But nevertheless, that land is not within the control of the applicant and is not an alternative for them. So therefore, we're looking at access through the existing development site. So this is the drawing showing the layout of that, and if you can work out, you can see it on the left hand side, you'll see a link of the road effectively heading off towards the existing development, which is the area in the more grey colour of that. So again, quickly just run through the type of houses you all can expect, which type of properties are going to be. These are some views just within the sites. This is in the area of the site adjacent to the original farm buildings that have been used more recently for stabling, and then views across the site showing the fields that have been used for pasture and obviously for grazing purposes. These couple of images show you the relationship to the existing development. So the first image is showing you the point where the access would come in onto the site from the existing development. The second image is showing you properties that currently back onto that part of the site. This image is showing you again, so that's a closer image of the first one. So looking over the existing fence towards Horton Close, so looking over to where the access point would take place. What you might be able to work out on the left-hand image, so this is the approved plan for the previous phase of development. And although Horton Close is currently a cul-de-sac, there are lines indicated on that, and it was explained in at the approval stage that would serve as an access to a later phase of development. So this isn't a proposal which differs from the established position on the site. Having said that, obviously the access will come through an existing modern development. Again, unlike Horseshoe Lane, the roads, footways, etc. on there are being built to an adoptable standard and therefore capable of taking the additional traffic. Obviously Wendy would be able to clarify those issues if need be, but as you can see, this is a modern residential estate. There are a number of turns in there to get to there, so it's not a straight route through the site, but again the highways situation has been looked at, has been considered that it is appropriate. Clearly some disturbance during construction periods, however that is a temporary situation. Horseshoe Lane, as I say, won't be used for vehicular traffic, However, an emergency access route which will be available for pedestrians, cyclists, etc. will be available from that position. These are just showing you horseshoe lane. So again, the issue is the width of the lane, the lack of footways on both sides and the poor visibility at the access. So as I say, this is again a long allocated site for residential development. This is an application for the details of that scheme. It is a scheme being built for Great Places Housing Association, so it's basically 100% affordable housing scheme of shared ownership properties. And as I say, application recommended for approval. You'll see from the late list that the recommendation has slightly changed in the sense that it was subject to a legal agreement. That legal agreement has now been signed. That legal agreement requires payments towards education facilities and towards the linear park which runs adjacent to the site. These are all elements which were part of the original hybrid outline application for the main site, and also you'll note the figures were slightly wrong in there, so that should have been for the education £155,000 on the two occasions of payment, not £75,000. Other than that, so the recommendation now is to approve subject to the conditions and to the now signed completed legal agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have any councillor charters?
Just a very quick one, Graham. In the pack we've got point 9.7 talks about an affordable housing statement to demonstrate the dedication of a minimum sum of £248,000 towards affordable housing. I'm just wondering why we need this if it's 100% affordable homes through shared ownership.
Yeah, I mean, effectively there is a requirement. As you know, we have an affordable housing policy. Normally that doesn't come to anything like this amount of homes. So obviously they've vastly exceeded that contribution. So as you can imagine, £248,000 doesn't go very far in terms of creating new homes. So it's the character of the development they put forward.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. Can you tell me the land designation, please?
It's land. The wider land designation was for employment purposes. However, in 2015, planning permission was granted for basically the redevelopment, if you know the area, substantial redevelopment of that area with various residential phases and with various commercial phases on the site. So it has that permission is extant, so that still exists. There are still outline application and reserved matters applications come in. The applicants decided to put this in as a full application. It makes it much simpler in many ways as we move forward. As you can imagine, that big strategic site, I think there's about 60 or 70 conditions. This simplifies it and we bring everything up to date, such as the financial contributions onto this scheme. So it's not allocated for housing, but it has an extant, long-standing permission in outline for that purpose.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillor?
It's just a query on construction traffic, so which way in and out does the construction traffic go when it's being built?
The construction initially, obviously, because they have to construct the link through, that will come from Horseshoe Lane.
Which is that bit at the bottom?
That's the bit at the bottom.
Right.
But obviously that is very short term. As soon as that access is put in and the link goes through onto the existing estate, which is on the left-hand side.
So will there be times of day when that will be allowed and that won't be allowed?
There's a recommendation, obviously includes a construction management plan. So all those issues, where the site cabins will go.
What times are there?
Whether you know, mud on the road, that kind of thing, Wendy's favourites, all these things, yes. And that would include things like hours that construction can take place on site and when vehicles can.
Do we know what hours that will be?
Yeah, it's part of that condition. We will run through those details at the time. Obviously we consult with highways, we consult with environmental health, and we will deal with that particular issue.
Right, so you don't know yet?
Not precisely, no.
if you will, Peter.
Just to clarify, so it's part of the condition process. So there's a condition requiring a construction and environmental management plan. When they come to discharge the conditions, they'll have to provide that to us and we will need to approve it. It can vary from site to site, so I wouldn't want to predict that in that sense. But obviously we have awareness of the fact that there's residences nearby and what have you, so we do take that into account, obviously. Of course, the applicant is here to speak in a moment, so you can ask them.
If we've no more, then I'd like to call forward the applicant, Jake Crompton. Yes, come here. You've got a fantastic second name there, mate. Have you done this before? Yes. Okay, so you've got 3 minutes on the buzzer, and away you go.
Thank you, Chair. This application, jointly submitted by Stonebond and Great Places, seeks planning permission for 101 new family homes, all of which are proposed as affordable housing in the form of shared ownership tenure. Great Places is a housing association who own and manage 26,000 homes across the North West, of which circa 3,700 are affordable homes with a 5-mile radius of this site. The principle of residential development is long established, dating back to 2014 when permission was granted for a mixed-use development at the Centre and Strategic site, also known as Broadway Green. This site relates to phase R3 and is the final residential phase to come forward. Once built, the properties will be sold and managed by Great Places, who have an existing presence at Broadway Green, with 175 affordable homes delivered or under construction on other phases. The proposal will take that up to 276 dwellings, showing them to be a responsible affordable housing provider committed to delivering homes in Oldham. Great Places have experienced high demand in this area on previous phases, with almost 330 names on the mailing list, and this demand is expected to continue. The scheme proposes a mix of 2-, 3- and 4-bed family homes, all with private gardens, in-curtilage parking and associated landscaping. The house types are NDSS and M42 compliant, contemporary in style, and will be delivered as a mix of detached, semi-detached and terrace-style properties. Access to the development will be taken via the adjoining phase known as R2, built up by a Redrow, and ultimately connecting onto the new link road that was established for this development. An emergency access and pedestrian link connects onto Horseshoe Lane and will improve access to services and facilities in the wider area. Construction access will be split between the two, primarily starting Horseshoe, because that's the farm buildings and the hard standing, but longer term will come through the Redrow estate. Section 106 contributions are being made towards education, and this development will also fund the next and final phase of the linear park, providing recreational facilities to existing and new residents, as well as delivering the required biodiversity net gain. Linear Park is expected to be fully complete and open to the public towards the end of this calendar year if the scheme is approved and the funding provided for the final phase. Circa 140 new trees will also be planted within the development, which is well in excess of the 2-for-1 replacement planting ratio. There are no outstanding objections from officers or statutory consultees, and the scheme does not conflict with policies within the adopted development plan for Oldham. The scheme will secure Homes England funding, subject to planning approval, demonstrating the continued multi-stakeholder commitment to delivering sustainable, affordable homes within Oldham. We therefore respectfully request that the application is approved in line with offer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Councillor Goodwin. Sorry, I'm getting things with it. Councillor Cosgrove.
Have you got the times of your construction traffic?
Thank you. So obviously, yeah, we've got a condition to submit a construction management plan. We've provided an indicative construction management plan. Obviously, typically we stagger activity throughout the day. We tend to avoid rush hour, that suits us. So we tend to avoid obviously school times as well. So we can fix times in the SEMP construction management plan when we submit it to Wendy for discharge and Graham to avoid sort of peak times. But it's worth adding we are constructing R4 across the other side of Linear Park, which is 42 dwellings, and we're at the sort of tail end of 5 and 6. So 5 and 6 are developed. That's 106 homes. So it's working well there. We're not having conflicts with residents. We're delivering through that scheme. The times vary. So obviously the site opening hours, people mobilise from site from circa 8 AM. Deliveries that will then be staggered stagger throughout the day. But typically, the standard hours adopted by Oldham are, say, between 8 and 6 during the week, and then some morning hours on Saturdays, no working on Sundays. Sorry.
Any further? Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The affordability bit of it, is it just the fact that you can get the house at a 50% mortgage and that makes it more affordable, or do you get the council at a reduced price, so the house at a reduced price as well?
Yeah, so obviously there's various tenures you can use under the affordable housing criteria. They're all set out in the NPPF as definitions. This scheme will be shared ownership, which is currently the next best thing to Help to Buy, which is no longer being used. But effectively, you can purchase a percentage of the home up front, and then obviously you can staircase over the years to 100% ownership. So effectively longer term, if that resident staircase to 100% ownership, they would own that house in perpetuity in full, and it would no longer be a affordable housing product at that point. So typically, they usually buy about 35% share of the house at the start, and obviously Great Places then maintained and managed throughout the period and assist them as a affordable housing provider.
Yeah, so just to come back then, it would help people to buy the house because they wouldn't need as big a deposit for just 35%, and they could still rent the other bit, wouldn't they?
That's right.
Because they still have the income, obviously. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Thank you for your time, Jake. So I'm happy to bring this to the floor if anybody wants to debate or comment, or we can... anyone? Councillor Charters?
Just to say that we need more affordable homes. We say it every time this committee meets, we need more affordable homes in the right places. This is a site that's been identified for housing. There's already housing being built there. Shared ownership housing is really helpful for getting onto the housing ladder. It was something I was looking at before I was lucky enough to purchase my own house. And I think it's something that's going to be really positive, so I think we should just move straight to approval, and I'll propose it.
So you're going to move. Do I get a seconder?
Yeah.
I'm inundated with seconders. I'll go with yourself. All those in favour? That's a unanimous decision. Thank you. So let's get back onto my script. Do we have an update on appeals?
Yeah, just a note, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just for noting the appeal update. If anyone has any questions, I'll have to contact myself or Martin.
Okay, and that brings us to the end, does it? Yep. Okay, this meeting is now closed. Thanks for your attendance.
Thank you. You've been dying to do that.
I'll just do it now.